Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, wind howling around you, the ground beneath your feet crumbling slightly. Your heart races, your breath shortens. Every instinct screams at you to step back. But then, a strange thought creeps in. What if the fear isn't real? What if the abyss before you isn't the danger, but the idea of it? What if the terror you feel is just a ghost, a phantom your mind conjured to keep you small? Fear is the oldest dictator, an invisible tyrant that has ruled humanity since the first human hesitated before the fire. It whispers warnings in the dark, paralyzes ambition before it takes flight, and convinces you that safety lies in never leaping. But here's the unsettling truth. Fear is an illusion, not in the dismissive motivational poster sense, but in the way a shadow vanishes when you turn on the light. It exists only because you believe in it. Think about it. Why does the same situation terrify one person while thrilling another? Why do some run from uncertainty while others are invigorated by it? The difference isn't in the world. It's in the mind. Fear isn't a force of nature. It's a story written by evolution, reinforced by society, and performed daily in the theater of your subconscious. But what if you could rewrite the script? What if the sweat on your palms before a big speech, the dread before a risk, the hesitation before love, what if none of it was real? What if fear was just a reflex, a conditioned response, a trick of perception? The ancient Stoics knew it. Nietzsche fought it. Jung excavated its roots in the shadow. Yet most still bow to it without question. So here's the great question. What would you do if you knew, beyond doubt, that fear could not stop you? The answer doesn't matter yet. What matters is that you feel the weight of the question, the dizzying possibility that everything you've avoided, every dream you've deferred, every what if that kept you shackled, was never truly a threat. But if fear is an illusion, why does it feel so real? That's where the real darkness begins. You don't have fear, you are fear. Not in the literal sense, of course, but from the moment you were born, your mind was sculpted by it. Every warning from a parent, every punishment from authority, every judgment from society, each one carved deeper grooves into your psyche, conditioning you to see danger where none exists. Fear isn't just an emotion. It's an operating system silently running in the background of your decisions. But why? Millennia ago, fear kept our ancestors alive. A rustle in the bushes could be a predator. Better to run than risk death. But in the modern world, that same hypervigilance misfires. Social rejection triggers the same panic as a lion's roar. A failed business venture feels like starvation. Your brain, wired for survival, cannot distinguish between real threats and imagined ones. Nietzsche called fear the mother of morality, the force that keeps people obedient, small, and predictable. Society doesn't want fearless individuals. It wants manageable ones. Religions preach humility, schools enforce conformity, and corporations profit from anxiety. From childhood, you're taught that fear is wisdom, that hesitation is prudence. But what if it's all a lie? Carl Jung revealed that fear often stems from the shadow, the repressed, denied parts of yourself you refuse to face. The terror of public speaking isn't about the crowd. It's about the subconscious dread of being seen as inadequate. The fear of failure isn't about losing money. It's about confronting your own self-doubt. You're not afraid of the external world. You're afraid of what it might reveal about you. Sartre argued that fear is the byproduct of freedom. The more choices you have, the more terrifying life becomes, because with true freedom comes absolute responsibility. It's easier to blame fear than admit you've been avoiding your own potential. So ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? Is it failure? Or is it realizing you are always capable of more? Is it rejection? Or is it the unbearable thought that you might not need approval after all? The illusion isn't just that fear exists, it's that you believe it has power over you. But the most dangerous realization is yet to come. Fear doesn't just live in your mind, it builds your world. Every decision you've avoided, every opportunity you've dismissed, every version of yourself you've buried, none of them disappeared. They became ghosts, haunting the edges of your life as regret, resentment, or restless dissatisfaction. The real danger of fear isn't the momentary discomfort. It's the slow, silent erosion of your potential. Most people live in a self-imposed cage, mistaking the bars for protection. They choose careers they don't love, stay in relationships that don't fulfill them, and mute their desires, all to avoid the possibility of pain. But here's the cruel irony. The avoidance of suffering becomes its own kind of suffering. A life half-lived is its own punishment. Fear tricks you into believing that if you just plan enough, worry enough, or stay small enough, you can outsmart chaos. But control is a myth. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus taught that we control nothing but our perceptions. Yet modern life feeds the delusion that safety is a matter of effort. So you overwork, overthink, and overprepare, only to realize too late that you were never in charge to begin with. From birth, you're handed a script. Be likable. Be practical. Don't stand out. The fear of judgment isn't natural. It's manufactured. Huxley warned of a world where people love their oppression, where distractions keep them docile. Social media didn't invent comparison. It weaponized it. Now you don't just fear failure. You fear invisibility in a world that rewards performance over truth. Your brain doesn't distinguish between real and imagined threats. Every anxious thought reinforces neural pathways, making fear easier to trigger. Over time, this becomes your default state, a low-grade dread you mistake for being realistic, but realism is just cowardice in disguise. The greatest tragedy isn't the risks you took and failed, it's the ones you never took at all. The love unspoken, the dream abandoned, the truth swallowed. Fear doesn't just steal your present, it steals every future you could have had. But what if you could hack the system? The moment you realize fear is a fiction is the moment you become dangerous to the system, to mediocrity, to everything that profits from your compliance. But freedom isn't about courage. It's about awareness. Nietzsche proclaimed, "You must become who you are." This begins with a brutal admission. You are not afraid because the world is threatening. You are afraid because you choose to be. Every justification, every excuse, every "I can't because" is a surrender. The rebellion starts when you stop blaming circumstances and recognize fear is not your enemy. Your belief in it is. Carl Jung's greatest insight was that what we refuse to face controls us. Your deepest fears, rejection, inadequacy, irrelevance, are not monsters under the bed. They are disowned fragments of yourself. To dissolve fear, you must invite it in, sit with it, interrogate it. Ask, what is the worst that could happen? And why does that thought terrify me? The answer will reveal more about you than the fear itself. Your nervous system is wired to flee uncertainty. Rewire it. Expose yourself deliberately to what you avoid. Speak up when you crave silence. Stay still when you crave escape. The goal isn't to conquer fear, but to familiarize yourself with its emptiness. Each time you act despite fear, you prove it has no power, only the illusion of it. Sartre is right. You are your choices. Every moment, you decide either to obey fear or to defy it. There is no middle ground. The rebel's mantra. I will act first and let my feelings follow. Action doesn't require bravery. It requires priority. Put the outcome before the emotion, and fear loses its veto. Ask yourself, what would I do if I knew I could not fail? Now ask, why the hell aren't I doing it? The gap between those answers is the life you've sacrificed to a ghost. This is the secret they don't teach you. Fearlessness isn't the absence of fear. It's the realization that fear no longer gets to decide, but the final revelation is even more radical. Here is the secret no guru will tell you. Fear does not exist, not as a force, not as a law, not as anything more than a ripple in your mind. The churning in your stomach before a leap, the tightness in your chest when you stand alone. These are not warnings. They are invitations. Every great life, every legendary act of creation or rebellion began where fear ended. For decades, maybe your whole life, you've believed fear was a signal, a red light flashing danger ahead. But the truth? It was never a signal. It was static, noise left over from ancient wiring, cultural conditioning, and the stories you were told. The moment you stop interpreting fear as a command, it loses all meaning. Schopenhauer saw it first. Most men take the limits of their own field of vision for the limits of the world. Your fears are not boundaries. They are the edges of your current imagination. When you step past them, they dissolve like mist. The cliff's edge was never the problem. Your belief in the fall was. The ultimate rebellion is this. The more you run toward fear, the less real it becomes. Not because the sensation disappears, but because you finally understand its true nature. Not as an obstacle, but as a signpost. It marks the exact place where your freedom begins. Now you stand at the threshold. Behind you, the safe, shrunken life fear designed for you. Ahead, the vertigo of pure possibility. This is the moment Nietzsche described when he wrote, "You must become a chaos before giving birth to a dancing star." So ask yourself one last question. If fear is the only thing standing between you and the life you want, why would you ever obey it again? The answer is simple. You won't.